Does all wheat act the same? If you are milling your own grains, is all hard wheat going to act the same? How does it compare to a hard white? Can wheat from the same farmer be a little different even though it's all from the same farmer? Well, in this video, we're actually going to be doing a deep dive side-by-side comparison to help answer some of these questions. And I'm going to be using wheat all from 4 Generations Organic Farm, so from the same farm, different varieties, and we're going to compare how they do in multiple recipes. We're going to be testing it with yeast bread loaves, with rolls, with cinnamon rolls, and even our Zojirushi bread machine. And we're going to see, are they actually different? Can you taste a difference? And maybe which one does better for which recipe? Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I talk all things real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. So this one is going to be a bit different of a video. It's kind of going to be a bake along because we're going to be doing a ridiculous amount of baking today, but it's also, we're going to be comparing to see if all wheats kind of act the same. So if you're new to home milling, you may have realized pretty quickly that we have a huge variety and selection when it comes to our wheats. Not only do you have hard red, hard white, soft white, kamut, einkorn, spelt, all of these varieties, but you even have like some varieties within some varieties. So you're gonna see that today. I have here, all from 4 Generations Organic Farms, I have 3 different hard red wheats and one hard white wheat. And I'm going to see how they compare side by side with multiple different recipes. So again, we're going to be doing a lot of baking with all the things to be able to test all that out. So it's a pretty good thing that I have a large family that's going to help me eat all the things that we're about to do. Now, the reason why that I chose 4 Generations Organic Farms is because all of their wheat is estate grown, which means that they actually grow their own wheat. Some of the places that you may find, like Azure Standard, well, they grow their own wheat. They don't grow all of their wheat. Other places, they sell wheat that comes from other farms. So there's a lot more variables involved when it comes to actually comparing the wheat. So 4 Generations Organic Farms, all of this, they grew themselves. I've actually seen and been to their wheat fields. It was beautiful. And I personally actually saw the Butlers Gold variety and the Yakura wheat berries in the fields right before harvest. Super cool experience. And so I love them so much. They are one of my favorite companies right now as far as where I get my wheat from. I use them on a regular basis. And I started noticing that between the wheats, they kind of act and taste a bit differently. But I wasn't paying close attention to it, but I was kind of noticing that there was a difference. So now I'm actually going to be paying attention and seeing it. So here's the wheats that we have. Now, do know that they are sponsoring today's video, but I love them very much and I use them all the time. They are organic wheat berries that they grow themselves, and 4 Generations Organic Farms has been around since the late 1800s during the Oklahoma land rush. So they are an excellent group of people. I personally have met Bob and Sarah and Adriana and all the people there that work so hard to bring us our beloved wheat berries. So to check them out yourself, just go to grainsandgrit.com/4generations. Use coupon code grainsandgrit for 10% off your first order. But they're excellent, and they're organic wheat berries that are clean and they're shipped to your house. And as far as organic wheat berries go that are shipped to my house, that's a good price. I will gladly pay. So let's get into the wheats that we will be using and also the recipes that we will be making as well. So we first have we have Yakura wheat berries, we have Skydance, Butlers Gold, and Stardust. They also sell wheat durum as well, but wheat durum I don't use for your typical loaves. That's only for pasta. So I won't be using that today. But otherwise, besides the wheat durum, these are all the varieties that they have at the moment for sale that they have grown themselves. But we're going to test these out. And again, what we're going to be making is I'm going to be making a loaf of bread, my simple yeast bread loaf recipe. We will be making rolls. I'm going to be making cinnamon rolls. And then I'm also going to be making loaves of bread in my Zojirushi bread machine to see if some act better in the bread machine than others. So we got a lot of baking to do. Let's get started. But let me know in the description box below if you've tried any of their wheats and which one is your favorite and what you like most about 4 Generations Organic Farms. So first up, I'm going to be testing out Stardust, the hard white wheat. And of course, with the bread machine, I dump and go. So we're going to do get this started in the bread machine first, and then get started on that simple yeast bread loaf dough to then make the things. Just a point of clarification today, I will be using the exact same recipe in my bread machine, the exact same settings for all of them. The only thing that will be changing is the wheat that I will be using. Okay, so just a little bit of information about Stardust. This is all according to 4 Generations website. And they describe Stardust, first of all, this is the organic hard white wheat variety, and this is the only hard white wheat variety that they offer. And they state that it's known for its quality characteristics, a lighter colored wheat berry and flour make it strong and versatile choice for bread baking and much more. So not an extremely descriptive description about Stardust, but I'll go ahead and tell you it's just a good hard white. If you like hard white, it's a bit milder of a flavor than a typical hard red, and this is a good hard white. It's reliable. It makes for great bread. The dough feels good. The bread tastes and feels great as well. So this is certainly an excellent hard white to have on hand in your kitchen. And do know that for those who are new, hard whites, this is really just a personal preference about the taste. So if you like more of a milder tasting bread that's still, whole grain, this is still milling yourself, hard white is certainly the way to go because it's not going to have your typical whole wheaty type flavor. So this is always the wheat that I grab if I'm making a French bread, if I'm making something that I'm not quite wanting a whole wheat type flavor in. This is a wheat that I always grab, and it's great to just have on hand. So here we have our cinnamon rolls are done. They look beautiful. They tasted great. Just good cinnamon rolls. And do know that you can always leave the icing and stuff out if you want it. And here are the rolls. They turned out great as well. They rose beautiful. They're nice and soft. They're a milder flavor being with the hard white. And then our loaf bread turned out perfect as well. It's, you know, a smaller loaf, but still delicious, slice as well. And then here's all the breads that we made. So this is the one that came out of the bread machine, the Zojirushi bread machine, and this did great. It rose well, it didn't fall at all. It's a lighter, whiter bread that you can see. And then again, compared to the rolls, the bread loaf that we made in the oven, that hard white just came out lighter from that bread machine and bigger as well. And the cinnamon rolls, this was all absolutely wonderful and very enjoyable. So next up, we are using the Yakura wheat. This is a wheat that you can find in other places, not just Four Generations Organic Farms. The other varieties, I have really only found them at Four Generations, at least that I know of. So Yakura is very interesting. I will say, whenever I went to their farm, they were about to harvest their Yakura wheat as well as their Butlers Gold. And the Yakura wheat, what shocked me was how short it was in the field. We're talking like maybe 1 or 2 feet. It is so short. And this is why you actually don't see Yakura as much, is I was told by Bob, who owns Four Generations, is that because it's so much shorter, it's actually more difficult to harvest. So that's why you kind of don't see Yakura as often as other varieties. But Yakura is a hard red winter wheat berry, and according to the website, they describe it that it mills into a flour that has a light, buttery, creamy, and malty taste. The wheat berries are great for artisan bread, cookies, brownies, croissants, rolls, and crackers. So that's according to their website. I personally have never used this other than your typical yeast breads that we are making today. But I do find that whenever they say it has a bit of that malty taste, that's pretty accurate. It does have, you know, a slightly different taste than your typical hard red wheat varieties. So yeah, it's just good. It's just delicious. And again, if you're new to milling your own wheat and you're new to all the different varieties, your taste buds may not even pick up on the nuances between the different hard reds. But I can tell. But I've been doing this for over a decade. My family, they probably can't tell. They may like what I give them, but probably unless I pointed it out, like to my husband, you know, he probably won't notice a difference. They just know this is great bread. We love it. The end. So don't ever stress out about which one you're using. But I do find that the Yakura is delicious. I do find that I think it is a little bit lighter of a hard red wheat. So when they say using it in like brownies and croissants, I could possibly see that, because there's something about it that's just a little bit milder and lighter than a typical hard red wheat. So again, just one to try. I find that the dough was really soft to work with, you know, didn't have any problems there, and the breads did great. So I would say the malty taste, having just a little bit of that malty flavor, is kind of what distinguishes this from other hard wheat varieties. So I enjoyed using it. It was great. And, you know, we'll see what they look like at the end. So here we are with the rolls. As you can see, these I think got a little bit bigger. I might have just formed them a bit bigger, but they're a bit lighter looking than the first one. And then here are the cinnamon rolls as well. Again, they looked a little bit lighter than that hard white wheat, the Stardust. And then the bread machine bread, it did fall a little bit in the center, but overall it's still pretty good. It was a soft bread, it's sliced well, but you can see right there it just fell a little bit. I could adjust my settings. I didn't feel like it. So that's something to consider. And then the loaf of bread turned out beautiful as well. So again, all of these breads kind of turned out a little bit whiter than I'm used to seeing with a hard red variety, but they were all delicious and turned out great. Up next, we are doing Skydance. And I have to say, this one is a unique wheat. You just need to try it to know what I mean. So bottom line is this is a hard red winter wheat, but it's a different hard red in my opinion. So here's what they state on Four Generations website. They state that it mills into a flour that has a mild flavor and is best known for making flatbread, naans, and tortillas. If I didn't know any better, I would not have guessed this was a hard red wheat, except for the berries looking like a hard red, meaning they have the kind of that reddish brown kind of color to it. But as far as the flavor goes, it's a much milder flavor than a typical hard red. Again, I would not have guessed. I also found that the dough was nice and soft as well. And I'll talk to you about how the breads turned out later on. But if you notice that they state on their website recommending it more for those flatbreads, I did use these for typical yeast breads, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, I do agree. I could see for being a hard red, this working very well for flatbreads while still maintaining a milder flavor. Usually I'm reaching for a soft white or maybe the hard white for my flatbreads because I don't always want that whole wheaty type flavor, but this is actually a great one that I think works great for either one. For a yeast bread, I found that the dough, I think I did need just a little bit more flour than I was used to needing and to get a good dough for the typical yeast bread, but otherwise it behaved very, very similar to other hard reds and things like that, and we'll discuss later on how it turned out with the breads. Okay, so we're done with the rolls. And I have to say, for the rolls and the cinnamon rolls, these were probably the softest ones out of the whole bunch. Of all the ones that we did, I think the cinnamon rolls and the rolls were the softest with Skydance. Again, the other ones were still delicious, but there was just an extra softness with this. And as you can see, it probably fell the most in my bread machine. So I probably would not use Skydance in my bread machine unless I wanted to fiddle with the settings, which I don't. But it fell a good amount in there. It was still fine. I could still slice it, eat it, no problem. It just didn't look as pretty. But it did do pretty well with a typical loaf. As you can see, I would say it didn't rise as much as the other ones, but that's still a beautiful loaf. It sliced well, and it was delicious. Last but certainly not least, we are using Butlers Gold hard red wheat, which I will go ahead and tell you, this is so far my favorite hard red wheat to use. There's just something about Butlers Gold that is it's just a good hard red. If you are a beginner to freshly milled wheat and you are using a hard red, I would recommend Butlers Gold. It is probably the most consistent, the most reliable, the easiest to work with for just a good hard red wheat. So fun fact, 4 Generations Organic Farms actually does supply wheat berries to King Arthur flour. And for those of you who may have been switching from store-bought flour, most likely, you know that King Arthur flour is probably the best flour to use from the store. And I kind of wonder, I guarantee you they probably send some the Butlers Gold over to King Arthur. Maybe some other varieties as well. I did not ask which ones get sent over to King Arthur, but this is probably one of them because, again, it's just so good. It's just the most steady, reliable, a good typical hard red wheat. So according to their website, this is also a hard red winter wheat berry. It mills into a smooth, buttery, nutty, wheaty flavor and yields a high protein. This flour is great for baking artisan bread, amazing pizza dough, rolls, and much more. And I do agree. For hard red, if I was to put a picture of hard red in the dictionary, it would be Butlers Gold. It also has a fascinating story as well. The reason why it's named Butlers Gold is after an Olympian athlete who attended Oklahoma State University, and back in the 1980s he did not get to go to the Olympics because it was in Russia at the time, and the president of the United States said, we're boycotting Russia, the whole communist USSR thing. History, gotta love it. But since then, he was an excellent sprinter. He was an amazing runner. And the unique thing about Butlers Gold is, unlike other varieties of wheat in Oklahoma, this one is not planted in September along with all the other wheats. This one is actually planted in December, but yet it's harvested at the same time in June as the other ones because it's known for sprinting to the finish line, which is just really cool. So as you can see, these are the rolls and the cinnamon rolls. They were absolutely delicious. Everything turned out really well. The one thing that did surprise me was the loaf of bread from my Zojirushi bread machine. But this is a typical loaf in the oven. You can see it's darker. It's that typical whole wheat type look and flavor to it. My bread machine, though, it actually fell a bit, and it never falls in my bread machine. So I think this was my mistake because I did it back to back in the bread machine and it was still hot from the previous loaf. So I think that's the only reason it fell, because usually it never falls in my bread machine. It is the most reliable one. So naturally for this video, it completely got messed up, but that's okay. It was still good and delicious, and I love this wheat. So did all the baking. We did all the things. So now the big question is, which one would I choose? If I could only choose one wheat from 4 Generations, which one would it be? And you can say hi to my cow in the background. So, and honestly, I think it would be Butlers Gold, just because it is the best hard red wheat. So out of the hard reds, I would definitely stick with Butlers Gold. They only have the one hard white, which I love. It's just a good, consistent hard white wheat. So ideally, both of them. The Stardust and also the Butlers Gold are just two of my favorite ones. The other ones are just, they're great to have on hand. They are unique. Each one has its own different flavor profile. Like I said, the Skydance one, literally, it did give me the softest rolls and cinnamon rolls. So I think as far as a hard red wheat goes for your flatbreads, things like that, that's an excellent one to have. So let me know which one you have tried out in the comments below, which one you like, what your experience has been, because I would love to know. And again, grainsandgrit.com/4 Generations Organic Farms. And for those of you who may be wanting to see my simple yeast bread loaf recipe, or even my recipe for my Zojirushi bread machine, then be sure to check out these videos here so that you can see it. I hope you have a wonderful, happy baking, happy milling journey, and I'll see you next week. Bye.